Hi there, I'm IELTS Master Lee, and welcome to this IELTS Master Strategy video. In this video, we're going to look at speaking parts 1, 2, and 3, and I'm going to give you a brief overview and some advice for each part. First, in this lesson, you'll learn, number 1, the scoring criteria for IELTS speaking. Next, the basics of IELTS speaking, part 1, 2, and 3. For each section, we'll review the content for that part, the length of that part, the number of questions, what to do if you don't understand the examiner, what to focus on for each section, a technique for answering questions or preparing in each section, and finally, how to prepare for each section. All right, let's get started. So first, it's very important to know how your speaking is scored. On this screen, we have a picture of the public band descriptors. In other words, the public, us normal people, since we're not examiners, we can look at this paper and get a basic idea of how your score is calculated. The private version of the band descriptors is only for IELTS examiners, but it's very, very similar to this public version. So if you look on here, we have the band scores from 9 down to 2. It's actually down to 0, but for this picture, down to 2 on the left side. And on the top, we have 4 different categories. The first one is fluency and coherence. Next is lexical resource. This means vocabulary. After that is grammatical range and accuracy. And finally is pronunciation. I've included a link to the official version of this document down in the video description. So if you're interested in reading each area, each category, then please click on that link and you can go to the official website and look at this in detail. But to explain basically, on the left we have fluency and coherence. Can you speak for a long time without having to try really hard? Do you stop a lot or are you quite fluent? And is your speaking logically connected? Does it make sense to the person who is listening? Do you repeat yourself really often? Or do you correct yourself really often? Or is it more natural? Okay. Next we have vocabulary or lexical resource. Are you using a range of vocabulary and are you using collocations or words that go together in the correct way? Do you paraphrase or summarize correctly, etc., etc.? Things related to your vocabulary. After that is grammatical range and accuracy. Are you using a variety of sentence structures? And is your grammar correct? Is it error-free? Now, you'll notice for all of these categories, to get a 7, you don't need to be perfect. You just need to be pretty good. For example, in grammatical range and accuracy, it says frequently produces error-free sentences. It doesn't say always produces error-free sentences. So you can make some errors and still get a 7 or even an 8 in speaking for this category. You don't need to be perfect. Why is this important? Well, sometimes when people make mistakes, they get nervous, and then their speaking becomes worse after that. You should know that even if you make 1 or 2 or even more mistakes, you can still get a high score on the IELTS speaking. So don't worry, don't get nervous because of that. And the last category is pronunciation. Okay? Not accent, but pronunciation. So they're a little bit different. If your pronunciation is good, if we can understand what you're saying, if the examiner can understand what you're saying, and you're pronouncing your words correctly using connected speech in a natural way, then you'll get a high score for this. All right, each of these 4 categories are equal in value. That means fluency and coherence, vocabulary, grammar, and pronunciation all have equal value. So at the end, we can add your scores in each category up and divide by 4, and then you'll get your speaking band score. Does that make sense? I hope so. Very nice. Let's continue. Let's look at speaking part 1. Speaking part 1 is about familiar topics. So topics that are personal or familiar with you. So You're going to sit down and go through a few questions. You'll say your name, show them your ID, and then they'll usually ask, okay, are you studying or are you working at the moment? And you'll have to answer something like that, ask you a few questions about work or a few questions about your study, and then you'll jump into a theme, and they have different themes. Now, we'll come back to themes in a moment. The length is about 5 minutes. You say 4 to 5 minutes. And the number of questions, there are about 12 questions, the introductory questions, and then 2 themes. If you don't understand, what should you do? You should ask the examiner to repeat the question. Ask the examiner to repeat the question if you don't understand. All right? They can't rephrase it. They can't say in different words, but they can repeat the question. Your focus here is going to be on fluency, on getting out your answers naturally. You don't want to hesitate too much. Just kind of relax, speak fluently, get comfortable. You're probably going to be nervous, but this is a good time to try and get over your nerves. The answer technique I recommend for this section is the 1-2 stop. This means give an answer, give 1 or 2 details, and then stop. For more information on this technique, take a look in the description of this video for a link to more detailed instructions on the 1-2 stop technique. Next, for preparation for speaking part 1, first you need to be prepared to introduce yourself and talk about your work or study. It can help to practice doing other topics, but you definitely need to be able to do self-introduction and work or study talk. All right. Some example themes of familiar topics could be your home, your family, your hobbies, food, etc. Let's take a look at some example questions for speaking part 1. Let's talk about your hometown or village. What kind of place is it? What's the most interesting part of your town or village? What kind of jobs do the people in your town or village do? Would you say it's a good place to live? Why? All right. And these are from the British Council IELTS website. They are legitimate speaking part 1 questions, reliable speaking part 1 questions. Okay, so these are very familiar questions, personal questions. They're about you. Next is everyone's favorite, and I say that a little bit sarcastically, everyone's favorite part, speaking part 2, the long turn. So for this part, you're going to talk for, they say 1 to 2 minutes, but actually you want to speak for about 2 minutes. It's okay if the examiner stops you, but try to reach 2 minutes if possible. And they'll ask you to describe some kind of topic. Usually it's a place, person, favorite something, object, an event, or some kind of activity. And it could be any one of these topics, but probably a bit more detailed. The length is you have 1 minute to plan the topic and 2 minutes to talk. All right, so the examiner will give you a card and read the topic to you, and then you have 1 minute to plan, and you'll be expected to speak for 1 to 2 minutes, but actually it's good to speak for 2 minutes. After you finish your 2 minutes, you'll need to answer a couple of rounding off questions. These are just simple questions about the topic that you just talked about before you start part 3. And the number of questions, well, you have the prompt and 1 or 2 rounding off questions about the topic. If you don't understand, well, you should understand the card. You're able to read it, and the examiner will also read it to you. Your focus here will be on fluency, of course, but also vocabulary. If you can use a few big words or nice collocations every once in a while, then you'll do great. It's okay if you don't use huge words or big fancy words all of the time. You don't need to. Even native speakers don't do that. But you should try to add in some nice vocabulary here and there, or nice collocations that you've learned. The answer technique here is, I recommend trying to follow the bullet points on the card for structure. You know, it's okay to skip the bullet points if you need to. You don't need to answer all the questions on the card, but it helps give you structure and give you ideas for what to talk about. If possible, it's also nice to add a small story in there to make the time a little bit longer if you have a good story about the topic. For preparation, you need to be ready for variations on the 6 main themes. So place, person, favorite, object, event, activity. Sometimes people get difficult topics for part 2. It's not always easy or predictable. You need to be ready for lots of different topics, but if you have something that you've practiced for each of these themes, hopefully you can change it a little bit and it will work for this topic. Also, try to use stories or examples as often as you can because they can help you to talk longer. And for fluency practice, try to use the 4-3-2 practice technique. This isn't something you do during the test, but to practice your fluency, you can use 4-3-2. This means speak for 4 minutes about a topic, then speak for 3 minutes about a topic, then speak for 2 minutes about the same topic. So you speak about the same topic 3 times without resting. It's a lot of work, but it's excellent practice for both your fluency and your accuracy. And like the other slides, I've included a link in the video description to more information on the 4-3-2 technique for fluency practice. So check that out. Next, example themes. Well, for example, describe a place that people go to swim, or describe a song that was memorable for you, or describe an author that you'd like to meet. Now here we can see there's a place, there's, you could say a song is an object, for example. An author is a person. So these are different examples of the general themes we have up at the top. And an example card looks kind of like this. Describe a journey, for example, by car, plane, boat, that you remember well. You should say where you went, how you traveled, why you went on the journey, and explain why you remember this journey well. Now, on the real card, you won't have the green and red text. This is something I use to show where these question words are that you can use and the important points in the title in green. So you won't have the color, but you will have this card and you'll be able to read it when you do Speaking Part 2. Next, Speaking Part 3, Discussion Questions. The content for Speaking Part 3 are further questions about the Part 2 topic, about people in general, society, and these questions tend to be abstract rather than personal. So you're talking not about you, but about society, about the world, about people. All right, and we'll look at an example next, and I can explain a little bit more. The length is 4 to 5 minutes, and the number of questions depends on how long you answer. The length of the section, the part, is going to be 4 to 5 minutes. So if you talk for a long time, you'll have fewer questions. If you talk quite short, you'll have more questions. If you don't understand, you can ask the examiner to rephrase the question. Not just repeat, but rephrase to say it in a different way. And your focus here should be giving complete answers. To do this, I recommend you use the area technique. That is, first you give the answer to the question. Then you give a reason for your answer. After that, you give an example. And finally, if you have an easy idea for it, you can also optionally give an alternative or a different answer. For example, one Part 3 question that my students have practiced before is, what kind of homes do people like to live in your country? I could say, first my answer, well, in the United States, people usually like to live in family homes. Let me give a reason. This is because the idea of a family home is very closely linked to the dream that many American people have for owning a house when they grow up. For example, in Southern California, where I'm from, most people live in these sorts of family homes, and some even have a pool in their backyard. And then finally, an alternative, if I want to, I could say, but in big cities, lots of people live in apartments instead of family homes, so that's popular as well. Now I'm giving an answer, a reason, an example, and finally, an alternative. All right? And for preparation, I recommend you practice answering lots of questions with the area technique up above. On the real test, you don't need to think answer, reason, example, alternative. You don't need to think about that during the test, but if you practice that way, it can really help you to do well on the test. All right, and some example questions. From the previous part 2 topic, now part 3 is about the same topic or the same theme as part 2. So now we have some questions about reasons for daily travel. Why do people need to travel every day? What problems can people have? What problems can people have when they are on their daily journey, for example, to work or school? Why is this? Some people say that daily journeys like these will not be so common in the future. Do you agree or disagree, and why? All right, so for these questions, try to use the area technique when you practice. And notice that these questions are about people. Why do people need to travel every day? This is not why do you need to travel every day. It's not all about you. This is about people, about society. They're more abstract questions than part 1, for example, where the questions are about you, your hometown. Part 3 is about society, about people in general. All right? Fantastic. Great job today. Thanks so much for watching this lesson. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us at youtube.com/IELTS Master or IELTS-master.com. Check out the other videos on the right-hand side. And finally, what do you want to see next? Let me know in the comments. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. Have a fantastic day.